Alright, what's up everyone, I'm Filoki, and today we're going to be taking a look at the possibility of the Seahawks signing former head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, Anthony Lynn, to fill the offensive coordinator spot. Anthony Lynn was a running back in the NFL for 7 years. He bounced around the league, he was on multiple different teams as a depth guy, he really didn't do too much in his playing career. He then became a running backs coach for a bunch of different teams before filling an empty offensive coordinator spot for the Bills in 2016. And after that, in 2017, the Chargers signed Anthony Lynn to be their head coach, and in the last 4 years they've been pretty mediocre. They made it to the playoffs once, they've had some decent offenses, but after this 2020 NFL season, Anthony Lynn was fired. During Anthony Lynn's 4-year tenure as the head coach for the Los Angeles Chargers, they actually were pretty decent on offense. They were right around top 10 in the league for all 4 years that he was head coach. 3 of those 4 years, Philip Rivers was the quarterback for the team, and in this last 2020 season, Justin Herbert, of course, was the quarterback for the Chargers, so definitely some pretty decent quarterbacks. It's not like he was struggling with horrible quarterbacks. I'm not a big fan of Philip Rivers, but he's definitely still talented, but their offense definitely did seem to be pretty good under Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn, no doubt, is a run-oriented guy. He's been a running back in the NFL. He's been a running back coach for a bunch of different teams. When he was the offensive coordinator for the Bills, they ran the ball really well. For the Chargers, their passing game seemed to be more of the focus, but they did have some really great quarterbacks during the time he was coach. But going into this next season, he would definitely seem to be a guy that Pete Carroll would like, especially since he wants to run the ball a lot and he has a lot of experience running the ball. Pete Carroll has made it clear that he wants the Seahawks offense to run the ball more and run the ball better next season, and that's something that Anthony Lynn definitely could come in and do, which is why I think he's probably one of the most likely options for the Seahawks to bring in. I personally am not a big fan of the idea of going back to running the ball on first and second down and then being forced to pass on third down and most likely inevitably punt. And there's a lot of Seahawks fans that share the same idea where they don't really want to go back to that scheme. You want to let Russell Wilson do what he can do, especially since he's so talented and there's so much talent around him. But it seems like Pete Carroll really wants to go back to what we were doing with Marshawn Lynch, but I don't think it's going to work as well. But although I'm not the biggest fan of what could possibly happen if we did bring Anthony Lynn in as our offensive coordinator, let's still take a look at why I believe he's probably the most likely option for the Seahawks to bring in. In the 2020 season, there are a lot of very obvious, very glaring issues when it came to Anthony Lynn as the head coach for the Chargers, but most of those issues came with the decision making and the time management. In terms of decision making, there were a lot of bad decisions in the 2020 season, with the Chargers losing a lot of one-possession games or really close games. There were multiple occasions where the Chargers didn't go for it on 4th and 1, which could have easily allowed them to win some of those close games that they ended up losing, including a midfield 4th and 1 attempt where they were against the Chiefs, one of the best offenses in the league, in overtime, and they decided that they wanted to punt the ball back to Patrick Mahomes rather than try to go for it on 4th and 1 and take their chances. Basically, you're giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes no matter what you do if you don't get it on 4th down or if you punt the ball, and you're going to lose either way, almost guaranteed, so you might as well go for it on 4th down and just hope to God that you get a first down. But there were a lot of decisions that he made that were very poor, and in terms of time management, there were a lot of horrible time management showings for the Chargers last year. They ran the ball multiple times, under 30 seconds on multiple different occasions with no timeouts, so basically instead of taking shots at the end zone, especially in the red zone, they decided they wanted to run the ball, try to get like a 2nd and 1, which didn't work, and then their entire offense was just scrambling. You know, Justin Herbert was still on the field trying to get a throwing play. They were trying to put the field goal unit on the field with no timeouts, mind you. So really, this was just a horrible showing from the Chargers this year in 2020 when it came to some really bad decisions and some really bad time management, and a lot of that lies on Anthony Lynn. But Anthony Lynn is definitely someone who is well respected by the players he coaches and other coaches in the league. He seems to be a great guy and a really good leader and someone that players seem to definitely like, so that could definitely be a good thing when it came to offensive coordinator. You keep him away from the horrible decision making and horrible time management of being a head coach, but you get the good leadership, the good person, and the good player likability from him on the offensive side. And his teams have definitely done pretty good on offense during his time with the Chargers and the offensive coordinator year he had with the Bills, but I don't really know if all the Chargers' success was really down to him. There seems to be a lot of interest in the Chargers organization for the Seahawks when they're looking to fill their offensive coordinator spot, with Anthony Lynn, Pep Hamilton, and Shane Steichen. I don't know if I said that right, but the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. The Seahawks seem to be focusing a lot on the Chargers, who had a very good offense last year, a pretty dynamic offense, but I think a lot of that revolved around Justin Herbert rather than good play calling or good decision making, and that's why I believe Pep Hamilton out of those 3 would be the best option. I think we should take a shot on him because Justin Herbert had an amazing year last year, and I think a lot of that came down to Justin Herbert being great, making great plays, and being dynamic himself. I don't think the play calling was all that. I don't think there were great decision makings. There were a lot of bad decisions. So honestly, I think that Pep Hamilton seems to be my favorite option from this. but that's really just because I liked watching Justin Herbert, and I think the Chargers offense ran through Justin Herbert mainly. But there's definitely no question that the Chargers had a pretty good offense last year. It was really just their defense that underperformed. They lost a lot of close games due to bad decisions and bad time management. Their offense did really well, and I think that came down to Justin Herbert mainly. That's why I believe Pep Hamilton is the best option out of the Chargers organization. But Anthony Lynn, he could definitely be a decent option. I just want to stay away from Shane Steichen. Honestly, I've not heard any good things about him as an offensive coordinator. I've heard great things about Pep Hamilton. I've heard some pretty good stuff about Anthony Lynn, but obviously he is a run-oriented guy, and I don't really want the Seahawks to go back to run, pass, punt. And I mean, honestly, I think that there are definitely some decent options out of the Chargers organization, and there's a ton of different options in the entirety of the NFL pool. But right now, if we're just looking at the Chargers organization, which seems to be of the top interest of the Seahawks for some reason, I think Pep Hamilton is the best option, and then Anthony Lynn is probably the second best. Just stay away from Shane. When it comes to the opening at the offensive coordinator spot for the Seahawks, it's Pete Carroll's job to fill that spot, and that's why I believe Anthony Lynn is probably one of the most likely guys since he likes to run the ball. I think that we should definitely focus on passing the ball, especially with such great talent on the offense for passing the ball. But it seems like Pete Carroll wants to run the ball more. Anthony Lynn is a run-oriented guy. I think he's a decent option, especially since Anthony Lynn has been in talks with the Seahawks about that offensive coordinator spot. And recently, Anthony Lynn has said that he'd be willing to fill an offensive coordinator spot if he doesn't really get any options at head coach. And, you know, there are definitely teams that could possibly sign him as a head coach, could offer him another spot as an offensive coordinator. But it seems like Pete Carroll wants to run the ball. Anthony Lynn is a run-oriented guy, and that seems like it might be the most likely possibility, sadly enough. But one last thing for this video is something that I think is going to be very important in the decision-making of the offensive coordinator spot, and that is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has reiterated multiple times that he wants to be a part of the offensive coordinator selection. He doesn't want to be the guy that picks the person, but he definitely wants to have an influence. And that's something that I think is really important, since obviously Russell Wilson is the franchise quarterback. He is the guy who is going to be probably the most close with the offensive coordinator, since he is the quarterback for the team. So he is someone that's going to be important in his decision making. I would hope that he's going to be a part of it, and I hope that Pete Carroll doesn't just pick a guy he wants and just completely discounts what Russell Wilson has to say. But Russell Wilson had a very interesting quote. When asked about the opening at the offensive coordinator spot and how he would like to have a part in the decision, Russell Wilson had this to say: "What's really important is somebody who, one, is a tremendous teacher of the game like Schotty was, somebody who is a tremendous leader of men, somebody who is extremely passionate about the game and creative, and knows how to find every guy's strength, every guy in the huddle, all 11, including myself. That's such an incredible part of this game. What's really important is for us to be one of the most explosive offenses in football, for us to be able to throw the ball extremely well, for us to be able to run it well, for us to have that up-tempo game, fast pace, slow it down, do all the mixture of things we want to be able to do. I think there's nothing that we can't do." Now, this quote from Russell Wilson is something that he obviously had to say. He had to say that he wants a great leader, a great teacher, and a great guy that can get the most out of all 11 guys on the offense. And that's something that's completely understandable, but I think the second half of the quote is the most important part. The first thing that stood out to me was Russell Wilson saying that we needed someone who was creative. Now, it's pretty clear that the Seahawks have run quite a simple offense, even though they have so many dynamic playmakers on their team. They have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson, some great tight ends, some great running backs, but we really just have the simplest of offenses. It seems like we really don't do too much with Russell Wilson in terms of design. Sometimes he goes out of the pocket because our offensive line collapses, but we really don't design him to get out of the pocket, make plays like that on purpose. So it does seem like Russell Wilson wants to have a more creative and more dynamic offense, which is something that the Seahawks fans, including myself, have wanted to see for a long time. Some other things from this quote that are definitely important are the fact that Russell Wilson wants to be an explosive offense, wants to throw the ball extremely well, and he wants to work with tempo a lot more. And that's something that's clear that the Seahawks didn't do too well last year. I think the first half of the season we did really well throwing the ball, being dynamic, using tempo to our advantage, but then in the second half we really just didn't adjust when things didn't go right for our offense. We started to get predictable, we started getting countered by defense, and there really weren't adjustments. I think that's the bad thing that Schotty did last year. I think that's something he could have done better, was adjusting, but I think that what he had in that first half of the season was something that he could have built on going into next season, could have adjusted better, could have made it a little bit more dynamic, less predictable, and then boom, we would have had a great offense. But we really didn't get to see that because he got fired so soon after the season ended. But I definitely think that Russell Wilson's quote about what he wants out of an offensive coordinator is important, and I think it makes a lot of sense. He wants a creative guy that'll pass the ball well, be explosive, be dynamic, will run with the tempo, and I think that's something that we definitely need. I don't know if Anthony Lynn would be the guy to do that, since he seems to be a more run-oriented guy. I don't think he would focus too heavily on Russell Wilson passing the ball a ton. I don't think that Anthony Lynn is the greatest guy when it comes to passing the ball, being dynamic. We'll see what actually happens if we do end up signing him. I think Pep Hamilton, when it comes from the Chargers organization, is a better option when it comes to Russell Wilson and passing the ball. We'll see what the Seahawks end up doing. It's obviously down to Pete Carroll who we end up picking up. I would like to take a chance on someone like Pep Hamilton, someone who worked so well with Justin Herbert, got him to be as dynamic as he was last year, made the most out of an amazing talent that Justin Herbert was in a horrible Chargers offense when it came to the offensive line. The play calling wasn't great, and the horrible decision making and time management. So Pep Hamilton, for me personally, is someone that I would like us to take a chance on. But it seems like Anthony Lynn, after talking to the Seahawks for the offensive coordinator spot, saying he was open to being an offensive coordinator, seems like he might be the most likely option since he is a more run-oriented guy. But we'll see what happens. I'm definitely going to support whoever we end up picking up. It's kind of something that I have to do as a Seahawks fan, because if we sign someone for 4 years, say as an offensive coordinator, and I hate him for those 4 years and every single thing that goes wrong with the offense is on him, it's just going to be kind of biased on that sense. So if we do end up signing Anthony Lynn, I'm going to hope for the best. I'm going to support him. Hopefully he does work well with the passing game. If we sign Pep Hamilton, I will be ecstatic. We'll see how it goes. I think that he would be great to work with Russell Wilson and see what he can do in the passing game. Give him a shot. I mean, it's an interesting thing when it comes to offensive coordinator, because the offense is really something that can be great for the Seahawks or it can be horrible. We've seen great games for the Seahawks offensively. We've seen horrible games for the Seahawks offensively. I think our defense started to figure things out in the second half of the season, so Ken Norton's job might be safe going into this year. I have no idea what's going to happen with him and the defensive coordinator spot, but I mean, this offensive coordinator spot is important because the Seahawks offense can be insanely dynamic. We can probably put up 30-40 points a game if we run a dynamic passing offense that can run the ball well. But if we want to go run, pass, punt like we have for the last 3 years without Marshawn Lynch, I don't think that that's the best option for us. And I think that we need to stay away from that if we possibly can. We'll see what happens. But really, whatever does happen, I hope it works out the best for the Seahawks offense and Russell Wilson especially. But with that, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know down below what you think about the possibility of signing Anthony Lynn. Who are some other guys that you would like to see? There's a ton of guys that are possibilities for the Seahawks. There's a ton of teams that could possibly try to sign Anthony Lynn and take him from the possibility of signing with the Seahawks. So we'll see what happens, but let me know down below in the comments what you think about this situation. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a great day.